Okay, we are starting section 8.5 and we're going to have two videos on this one. So this will be 8.5 part 1. Okay, so our learning target, we are going to add and subtract rational expressions. Okay, so rational, remember, is a fraction that has a polynomial in the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so when we add and subtract with like denominators, it's not hard at all. So we're going to start with that. We already have the same denominator, in other words. Okay, so remember, if I'm adding a over c plus b over c, the denominators are already the same, so I just add the numerators together, but I keep the denominator. That's why you have a like denominator, and subtracting would be the same. So I would just subtract a minus b over c. So let's look at an example of doing this with a rational expression. So if I had 9 over 2x plus 2 over 2x, they already have a common denominator, so I would just have 9 plus 2 over 2x. And that would just end up being 11 over 2x. So that's not hard at all. The hard part is when we try to add and subtract without like denominators. Because the hard part is getting the common denominator. So try to be patient with yourself on this, because it's going to take some time for you to understand what the common denominator will be. But let's just look at the general case. If I'm adding a over c plus b over d, these aren't like denominators, so I would have to multiply both of these by d, so I'd get a over d plus c over d, over c over d, and over here I'd have to multiply top and bottom by c. Okay. Once I get the common denominator, then I do what I did before and I just add the numerators, but I keep the denominator. And the same exact thing will happen with subtraction. Okay, so let's just look at an example of some simple fractions, just to remind us how to do this process. Alright, so the common denominator with 7 and 3 would be 21. So what I need to do is I need to multiply the 1 times 3 and the 7 times 3. And then on the 1/3, I've got to multiply both of those by 7. Okay, so I'd get 3 over 21 plus 7 over 21, and I would add those together and get 10 over 21. You've done this a lot, but it's just hard. We just need to kind of remind ourselves and let it sink in here. Okay, so let's do an example with a rational function. Okay, now like I said, the hard part is figuring out if this denominator is 2x and this denominator is 4x squared, what would my common denominator be? And one thing you could do is this does contain a 2x. So this would be the same as 2x times 2x. Okay, so this would give me 4x squared. So when I look at it like this, the 2x is already contained in the 4x squared. So you need to have a common denominator, in this case, of 4x squared. I try to think of different ways to say this for students, but whatever you pick for your common denominator, both denominators have to go into that completely, with nothing left over. For instance, 3 goes into 21 7 times, and 7 goes into 21 3 times. Alright, so let's go back, and I'm just going to start over here. Now, this fraction right here already has my common denominator, so I don't need to do anything, but this one needs me to multiply top and bottom by 2 over 2x. Okay, and that would get me 2x over 4x squared plus 1 over 4x squared. Okay, now these aren't like terms, 2x and 1, so I just write the expression 2x plus 1 over 4x squared. Okay, that would be the final answer to this, adding those together. Alright, now let's try another one. Sorry, this is x plus 1 over here. Now when you first start this out, this whole process out, the first thing you want to do to find the common denominator is to factor anything that can be factored. And we're talking about factoring everything in the denominator. Alright, so this one I don't factor because it's not factorable. And then this one, the denominator, I could bring a 2x out of each of these. So I'm going to factor out a 2x, and that would leave me with x plus 2. Okay, now remember it's very similar to what we did up here. 2x is already contained in 4x squared. So my common denominator, I need the 4x squared, and that takes care of this term. And then I also need the x plus 2. That would take care of everything here and everything here. So now I got to figure out how to get this common denominator. I'm going to give myself some room here. Okay, so if this is my common denominator, this is just missing the x plus 2. So I need to multiply by x plus 2, top and bottom. This is just missing a 2x, because 2x times 2x would give me the 4x squared. Alright, so I would have 5 times x plus 2. Sorry, I didn't realize I was turning that so much. Try to straighten it up here. Okay, and then over here I'm going to have 2x times x plus 1 over the common denominator. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to do the distributive property and multiply through by the 5. I'm going to go ahead and combine these together. Since I'm adding, I can add the numerators. I need to do the distributive property here. these would be all over my common denominator. One more step I can do. I can combine any like terms that I have, and I'm also going to write it with the highest exponent first. 5x plus 2x is 7x. And don't multiply out your common denominator, just leave it. Okay, this is the final answer here. This is going to take some practice, and it's pretty hard. It might be one of the hardest things you've done this year, so try to be patient with it. And that is the end of part 1.